Can you smell that? Spring is in the air. It's getting close. We are going to be getting our seedlings ready now, because it's a little bit early before your last frost, to get them moving out. Right here on the Backyard Gardens podcast, Minisode, we're talking about repotting and fertilizing seedlings.
To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Welcome to the Backyard Gardens podcast, where we talk about all things gardening and give the information out for you to be successful in your garden, whether it's your first or your last. We are your hosts, Ben, the backyard gardener, and
Batavia, the front yard gardener.
one in the country,
One in the city.
Now get ready as we dig deep into this wonderful world of gardening as we learn to grow and grow for change.
Are you excited?
All right, everybody, spring's on its way. Spring is on its way, and your seedlings are getting pretty big, unless they're like Batavias, which are still really small. Oh, just joking. That was so
was
rude.
This like our 2020 episode? Literally last year, I was starting seeds, like pepper seeds now. Those poor things. They never had a chance.
Well, you want to know that I was right there with you, because remember, I was late. I was like, oh, shit. Like, for some reason, it just snapped. I was like, I totally forgot.
Yeah.
And I suffered the consequences from it. Yeah. So,
but
not this year.
I made better decisions this year. So I have... And, you know, for me, the peppers take a little bit longer than I thought initially. So, I mean, these things are like celebrating their 1 month anniversaries, you know, so it's time.
Yeah, it is time. And, you know, the bigger they get, the more roots they have. We need to give them more room, especially now before we have to put them out. Yeah. You know, you don't want to put them out there root bound. And you don't want to put them out there freshly repotted to get hardened off. You know, you want to be somewhere in the middle. Yeah. So, and not all of them are going to need to be repotted.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's it. So there are some things that right around now we are, depending on where you are, you may actually be moving outside to harden off because it's a part of your spring collection. I feel like it's like, you know, some type of Victoria's Secret collection or something. And then there are other things that are for your summer garden, which is primarily what we're talking about, that still have some indoor time, right? But those babies have been growing, you know, they've been talking to their neighbors in your little grow area. And they're like, why are they sitting in that big Cadillac of a pot? And I'm in this itty bitty thing, right? Like, what's up with that?
They're like, hey, yo, let me get the camper.
Yeah,
I need the camper. This isn't working. Yeah, and by the way, the spring collection and summer collection, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now that seedlings and gardening plants are sexier than any Victoria model I've seen. Thank you for asking.
Can we have a special on, remember they used to do the specials at like, you know, 7:00 on a Tuesday night or something? It was all the rave, like a runway of, okay, maybe that's a little far. Yeah. Maybe that's a little far. A runway of plants, you know.
We can make it happen.
Okay. Promises.
Don't make me promise. I can make it happen. I don't know if it'll be good, but I'll give it a shot. How's that?
I'm here for it.
All right, runway. It's happening. So repotting, you know, right now is the time. And like we said, you want to be in the middle when you put them out. So when I repot mine, I usually repot them into something with some potting mix, like regular potting mix, and I add a little bit more of my seed starting mix that I made to hold a little bit more water retention, because now the plants are really growing.
Yeah.
So how do you tell if they're root bound or they're getting root bound?
So a couple of things, and I really have leaned on my indoor plant, like indoor house plant experience here, because it's very similar. So you may find yourself watering more often, which means there isn't a lot of soil, you know, left in that pot for that plant to feed off of. So you find yourself it's dry more often. An easy way to check, especially with some of these smaller plants, if something's dry, you can basically take that, if it's in a single pot, take that pot, put your 2 fingers around the plant, the stem of the plant, turn it over, and you can see if it's root bound when you pull it out. Another way is just looking at the bottom. Sometimes if it's root bound, you'll see the roots coming through the holes in your pot. So yeah, I mean, it's not the end, but we want to try to manage against that.
No, it's time to do something at that point. And it's exactly like a house plant, because at this point it is a house plant.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than a house plant at this point, but that, and the soil not being there with the root, that's a big key, because the more you water more and more and more. That just means that the plant's growing and it's feeding more and more. So, but it surprisingly takes a fair amount of time for them to get root bound and those little seed cells, and we're assuming, to be clear, that everybody's using the 6-pack seed cells that, like a burpee plant or a Bonnie plant, not a burpee, a Bonnie plant comes in at the store or something. A lot of us reuse those. So, the nice wide ones, that's what I'm assuming people are using. Now, you can get smaller ones and all that, and that's different.
Well, there are a couple of things. So there are, as a part of repotting, you're basically going from one size container to a slightly larger container. So again, leaning on my last year experience with Seed Starts, leaning on my years of experience with indoor plants, you don't want to quadruple the size of that container when you're potting up, right? So you're taking that small container, that's 6-pack, and I don't know, what do you use? Because I have some larger 6-packs, but I would take those plants out and then put them in their own individual pot at that point.
Yeah, that's usually what I do. I put them in their own individual and I don't really have a certain size. I actually pot them up a fair amount. So I don't go up 6 times. Yeah. I don't know the volume, but it's,
starting point. That's too much for me. I'm holding up 2 random containers.
I would put it in that.
Yeah, you would?
I would do that.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, if it was, I'd put a shot glass. If I had a plant in a shot glass, I would put it into a regular coffee cup. No problem. And the reason why is because, as soon as you take that plant out, it's just going to spread. Yeah. Its roots are going to go and grow. So
one other point of clarification too, though, is the size of your plant from the soil up also is an indicator. So just because it's been 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, doesn't mean you have to repot. Really the indicators we talked about, if it's root bound, looking at it to make sure that, you don't want something with 4 true leaves on it and you're like, all right, it's time, necessarily. No. No. Because one of the things is that those roots you want developed in that initial starter pot, if you will. And that makes it easier for it to go up a size from that shot glass to a coffee mug. If those roots really aren't established, that thing is going to be swimming in that coffee mug. I guess let's clarify. Is it a Batavia coffee mug that's like 88 ounces? No. Okay.
I said a normal size coffee mug. Okay. That's what I said. A normal. No. And when there's actually generally there's only certain things that I repot in my house. So I almost always repot my tomatoes. Okay. Okay. And the reason why is because, and if you don't know, now you're going to know, you can replant tomatoes deeper on the stem and they will produce more roots. So when and if you're looking at the video, great, you can see it. If not, sorry. You have a pot that's about this deep. We'll say it's 2.5 inches deep. I think they're 3 inch. And then you go into a 6-inch pot, then you can bury it deeper. Then you get another 3 inches worth of roots to put in there. So they can come out. And then when I replant it, in my garden, I can go even deeper because it's tolerant to get even more roots, because more roots equals more fruits.
And stronger plants. Wait, hold on. Damn it. I thought we were going to get that intern in for the minis to ring the bell. Shit.
Yeah, well, Leonard's fingers ain't working that good because it's a quick tap stop.
Well, did you get the resumes that Leonard submitted? Like, he needs an assistant? Like, what? Yeah. Come on.
He doesn't even do anything. Yeah. Sitting there with his feet on the desk. So, and then I'll repot peppers if they need to be repotted. Eggplants. And that's really where it stops for me. I don't really go too crazy because everything else, generally speaking, can go in, it can go out there small.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to repump because you don't want them to get so big. Like if you did a zucchini in the house or a pumpkin or something, you don't want them to get too big.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to be in the dirt that much.
I think in addition to those, I think I also repotted maybe my basil last year before it went outside. So,
I could see that.
Yeah. And also a couple other notes, and just generally there's some plants that, which, I mean, if you're here, that's a different story, but there's some plants that are preferred to be direct sowed. And so it's also that same idea of I start my okra indoors, right? And that's, you know, historically something that people recommend direct sowing. But if I start my okra indoor, the question is, am I going to repot that? For me, no. For me also, I've not started okra, just as a reference. I was just using it as an example. I've not started okra yet because it's a heat-loving plant and it basically sprouts up really fast, and I want to get it closer to my planting date. But just keep in mind, like Ben said, you're not going to need to repot everything.
Well, and if you have a question about, you know, oh, should I repot this? Should I not? What I would recommend is I would go to one of the big box stores that has these seedlings out there, and look how big they are in their packets.
Dude.
And you'll see other ones that are in separate pots, and then, you know, you'll see the mixture and you'll get an idea of like, okay, this is how I need to go about it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's absolutely. I'm going to save my story around that for. There's another Minisode that probably fits better, so you guys have to stay tuned for that.
Well, we don't have time for a story at this point. We only have time for closing remarks.
But just know that you will still get Batavia stories and Minisodes. Don't think you got out of it if you're listening. Like
you just have to start early.
Damn it.
So yeah, I mean, you know, and then fertilize. How can we not talk about fertilize? So give it another shot of fertilizer, diluted, liquid soluble fertilizer at this point, because you want to give it what could roughly be about its last feeding before it goes outside. Yeah. So you want to give it a good feeding right now, and then repot at the same time if you have to, or don't, whatever, but make sure you give it a feeding right now. And like I said, water soluble liquid fertilizer, because the root, when it hits the roots, it feeds. Yeah. It doesn't have to break down, doesn't have to do anything. It's boom, right away. And diluted too. Did
you cover that we're repotting today, but we're not putting those plants out tomorrow? There's a time frame that we're trying to repot before those plants go out. So what are you thinking? Like a couple of weeks before I get ready to take my plants out?
Well, what I'm thinking is stay tuned to the Minisodes, and we're going to tell you that week on Tuesday. Ooh. When we come in, we're going to tell you when to put those outside. That's how we roll. Come on, man. I can't show the shark yet. Come on.
Oh, man, listen. I mean, I'm just saying.
But do not put them outside yet. Don't repot them and put them outside. Because, I mean, then you're just kind of wasting time and effort and everything else. Yeah. So, all right, stay tuned, because in a couple weeks, we are going to tell you when to put them outside. But don't do it yet. Repot if needed and fertilize. You heard it here on the Minisode of the Backyard Gardens podcast.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you want to see what we're up to, or just stay up to date on all the announcements regarding the show or anything gardening, then you can follow us on Instagram at Backyard Gardens TV.
We love seeing what you guys are doing, so use hashtag BYG podcast in your posts, and we'll be sharing your gardens with the Backyard Gardens community.
And check us out on YouTube at Backyard Gardens, where we will post this show, all of our other shows, clips, and then also some gardening tips and just gardening entertainment. And you can see us at our website at backyardgardenstv.com. But that's it for today's show. So help us as we learn to grow and grow for change. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. We'll call this one a wrap.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.